So the purpose in terms of this particular activity, tracing of requirements, is to ensure that the requirements and design, they're aligned. They're actually whatever you're trying to propose in terms of design of the way that you perform something, the architecture, the design, high level design, low level design, the technology suite of this technology stack that you're proposing, all of them are in line with what is required of this product or the platform or the application. So you don't come up with some random idea. I want to use Java today. Why do you want to use Java? What is the reason? What do you want to achieve? Why do you need it? What is the motivation for us to create a product? What's the application? Is it going to be web or mobile application? Who is going to use it? What are their needs? What are their problems? So all of that would form the basis for you to be able to take a decision about a technology or an architecture or a design or a visual design or some user interface or some kind of branding guidelines, whatever you want to do, everything is actually driven by the requirements, the what, why, when, where, and how, right? So requirement traceability in that context is used to ensure everything actually, whatever you do is going back to the requirements because that is the backbone as we discussed, that is the spinal cord of whatever you're trying to do with respect to the project or the process or the initiative. So you need to make sure that all the tasks that you do as part of your life cycle actually maps back to something that actually is of value. And that would help you in defining the scope, in managing the changes, risks, the time, the cost, and the communication, everything. So basically that would really help you with traceability. Requirement traceability would really get you to that and detect missing functionality and gaps in requirements. If you do not have a requirement that's actually mapped to the architecture, that means that there is a gap. So something is missing. So some requirement is not addressed in your solution. So you can really go back and change it. So traceability is basically from, as we discussed, the forward traceability is from the requirement through to the architecture, the design, the low-level design, the development, the testing, and the test cases and the test results. And finally, perhaps the server in which you're deploying all that. So if you, this is forward, if you do not have this kind of thing, if something is missing, if some requirement is not addressed in any of these elements further down into the life cycle, that means that you have missed that requirement. So you can actually kind of take a step to go back and correct that mistake or address that requirement. In same way goes the other, in terms of the each of these elements, if there's some changes that needs to happen, what is leading to that? If you found some block of code lying there and you didn't understand why you're using that block of code, or why you're using a tool and not the other one, then you need to understand what is the fundamental basis for that. And you need to connect it all the way to what's the design, what's the architecture, what's the requirement. Oh, okay, so we're using this because this is the requirement. The requirement states that we need to have a web interface for exposing our APIs to third-party web services websites. Oh, okay. So that's because of that we are using the API source here. We're using a new technology of exposing our APIs, right? So there is a reason why you have done this, and that also has got, this is the backward traceability of the test cases, the test results, or the piece of code or tool that you've used or architecture elements, design, all of that again need to be traced back to the requirement. So that's the backward traceability. And why do you need this forward and the backward traceability? Essentially, that would help you understand the impact of if there's any change anywhere in the process, in the cycle, all the way through, you can easily understand what's the potential impact it could create. If I have a change in this requirement for example, from a web interface, I want to change it to a mobile application. What is the impact that is going to have on the architecture, on the design? How much of design should I redo? How much of architecture should I rethink? How much of code should I rewrite, right? So that's all the things. So that is a forward traceability. So if a small little change in the context of business requirements saying that I want this website to be responsive, or I want this to be able to work on the mobile phones as well, it needs to be able to work on the mobile phones, and then the architecture. What should I change in the architecture? What should I change in the design? What should I change in the code? What more should I do, right? So that's what is important for the impact analysis. Deep insights in scope and complexity of change. Again, that would give you an idea in terms of what is the extent of the change we're talking about. If you're changing this one little thing here, how is it going to impact others, right? So that is important to understand. So what is the extent, what is the level, what is the scale of impact it's going to have if you make a small little change here in across the entire application, and address requirements versus unaddressed. So assessment, that's what we're talking about, the gap, right? So what if we have missed some of the elements of requirement in addressing that in the solution? What should we do to include that? What more should we do?